What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Nick and I hope you guys are doing well whenever you are checking out the latest video here on the channel. Today, my friends, we have for you guys the best of the best when it comes to the Q&A video. I am so excited to get into this because this was a video that I was really pumped to make as the last video of the summer here. We had an absolutely terrific summer here on the channel. We are currently sitting at 36 100 subscribers and nearly 2 million views total on the channel, and it is all thanks to you guys here. I wanted to give the new viewers of this channel an opportunity to ask questions here. The last time we did a Q&A was back in April of this year for the 3-year anniversary, and since then we have gained a lot of new viewers and a lot of new subs. So I wanted to give those people a chance to ask any questions they might have about me or YouTube, music, TV, whatever was on their mind here. If you didn't get a chance to ask your question, you can leave it in the comments here and I will definitely try my best to answer it. But for now, let's jump into the Q&A. I want to give a shout out to all of these people on screen who asked questions here. And I'm just going to credit everybody at once here because some people asked multiple questions and some questions were asked by multiple people. So it's just easier to do it this way. So thanks to everyone here who participated in the Q&A. And let's get started with our first question, which is probably also the most important one, which is on a scale of 1 to 7, what is my favorite color of the alphabet? Well, that's a great question because the correct answer is semicolon. If you think otherwise, you are wrong. Semicolon is the only correct answer. If you say tortoise, you're too young to understand. And if you say hot air balloon, I recommend you walk outside and touch some fucking grass. Did I steal this concept from Mike's Talks and Thoughts? No, actually. Let's just say heavily inspired by. Mike is actually really good at doing these Q&As. He's done 2 of them for different subscriber milestones he's hit. So he did one for 500 subs and he did one for 1,000 subs. And then I did mine for my anniversary. And it was kind of coincidental that he hit his 1,000 subscriber mark earlier this month in August, and I was planning to do another Q&A towards the end of the summer anyway, so it just kind of worked out that the timing was so close. But no, I wouldn't say I stole it. He actually asked questions for this, so we're very active in each other's channels and giving ideas and giving inspiration to one another. So it's just one of those things, you want to do something and just coincidental that he also had the same idea there. Have I ever watched Better Call Saul, and if so, how would I rate the final season? I haven't seen all the way through. In fact, the only episode I've seen of the show is the pilot episode. I do want to get into it because I have been keeping up with a lot of the reviews that people have done. I know it's kind of been a trend here on YouTube to do live streams after the episode. That's what Mike was doing for a while, but I know that there are some other channels that have done it too, because season 6 was huge and it was just a momentous season for the show. I have seen all of Breaking Bad though, so I definitely am caught up with the lore of it, and I love Saul as a character. I love Bob Odenkirk in the role, so it's probably something I'll catch up with soon, but no, I haven't seen it yet. Have I ever gotten recognized in public for doing YouTube? I have not. That's a very interesting question. I wouldn't expect to because, in the grand scheme of things, I'm still a very small channel. I would say the minimum that, you kind of require if you want to just refer to yourself as a star or a real YouTuber is probably at least 100,000, or something. If you would to be famous off of it, famous in quotes, of course. So no, I've never gotten recognized, but that would be pretty cool. I actually have recognized, I have seen other YouTubers in public that I've met, which is pretty cool, but no, I myself have not gotten recognized. What are my thoughts on the Italian rock band Måneskin? They won Eurovision in 2021, and they're my favorite rock band. I really like Måneskin. I think that they're very underrated. The problem that I have with them personally is, I really only listen to them for the music because I don't speak Italian. I don't really know it. So the lyrics, like when they speak fully Italian, I just can't really pinpoint anything that they're trying to say or like conveying in the songwriting or anything, which is one of the reasons why I really like music, is hearing the lyrics and deciphering, what the singers or songwriters are trying to say. So, it kind of loses some points for me in that regard, but they do have some full English songs, and my favorite of which is definitely I Want to Be Your Slave. I think that song is awesome. Huge fan of that one, so definitely a thumbs up for me. What are my thoughts on hair metal and glam metal? I think that it gets way too much hate for no reason, honestly. I really like hair metal. Because the thing is, hair metal and glam metal are so kind of vague as far as what they actually mean. Like, there's so many bands that you could hypothetically put under that label that you can't say are bad by any means, right? Like, you can honestly say Monoskin is kind of like that. They do have some glam metal influence. But like one of the biggest that comes to mind for me is Guns N' Roses, because I've seen them get labeled as hair metal before. And Guns N' Roses fucking rocks. Like, if you don't like Guns N' Roses, then you're just wrong, right? Like, objectively. Obviously, just like any genre, there's going to be some good and bad. But, yeah, it gets so much hate because there's a lot of underrated stuff in there. Obviously, people like Rat, I think, are a lot of fun, even though they're very cheesy. I do like me some Rat. I think Skid Row is awesome. They're very underrated. Motley Crue is obviously great. So, yeah, I think that they, in general, like, the genre as a whole just gets way too much cynicism thrown at it and just gets way too much hate unjustifiably. What are my favorite King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard albums? One of my top 5 favorite King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard albums. I know this is going to be a very basic bitch answer, and I'm sure all the King Gizzard stands are going to come at me for it, but all the albums that they released in 2017, the stretch of 5 albums they had there, which encompasses everything from Flying Microtonal Banana to Gumboot Soup, is the era of their discography. Because in 2017, when I was in high school, I had a friend of mine named Brandon who was really into rock and kind of experimental rock. Shout out to Brandon if you're watching this. Who introduced me to their song Rattlesnake, and that was the first one I heard by them. Absolutely loved it. We had a class together. It was an English class, and every day we'd come in and we'd listen to some King Gizzard. And so when I first heard a Flying Microtonal Banana, that was the first album that they released that year, and it was the first introduction that I had to them. And so I just kept up with the release schedule throughout 2017. So those 5 are definitely the ones that I come back to the most. I've heard some of their earlier stuff and some of their later stuff, but not as much, just more or less like a few songs here and there, a few singles, sometimes. I haven't done the full deep dive into their discography because they have I think almost 20 albums at this point, or maybe even over 20. So I definitely need to just one day sit down and just go through it all. But no, I'd say those 5. Flying Microtonal to Gumboot Soup, that stretch in 2017. What are 5 underrated albums by popular bands in my opinion? This is a really good question because there are a lot of bands out there that are obviously super massive and super famous, popular groups that have, I would argue, very underrated albums, even within their own fandom. So this is a very interesting question to get here. And the 5 that I would say are It Won't Be Soon Before Long by Maroon 5, which is probably the most underrated album, just period. I don't know why Maroon 5 gets so much hate. They are really good. At least their early stuff is, and that's easily one of their best. Trey by Green Day. I mean, obviously, right? I had to put a Green Day album in there, and I think Trey is their most overlooked. I would also make an argument maybe for Nimrod, but Nimrod was still early enough. It came right after Insomniac, so I think enough people know it that it's not super underrated. Because the trilogy, I mean, people just hate. So I think Trey especially just doesn't get enough love or enough attention from the mainstream audience. So that would definitely be one I would say is part of this top 5. How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb by U2. I know most people, I think U2, their 80s work is the best. I like their later stuff, honestly. I like the 2000s, even into the 2010s. I think they've put out some really good stuff. The 90s is very mixed. There's some really good stuff and really bad stuff. But the 2000s were pretty consistent, and How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb is my favorite by them, so I say that's pretty underrated. After Laughter by Paramore, my brother, for whatever reason, hates this album. He fucking hates After Laughter. I think it's their best, personally, and I'm a big pop punk guy, you guys know, and this is not a pop punk album by any means. This is a very different style for Paramore, which is one of the reasons why my brother just doesn't like it, because it's very different than the rest of their stuff. So I can kind of understand that, but for me, I think it's just so beautiful, and Hayley Williams is just such a superstar on this one. The songwriting's great. This is just top tier all around. And then the final one would be Glass Houses by Billy Joel. Billy Joel is a huge artist, but even, in and of himself, I think he's pretty underrated. But of all of his albums, my favorite is Glass Houses, so that's the one I'm going with. What are 5 overrated albums by popular artists? This is a very easy question as well. Very interesting one, but pretty easy for me, because there's a lot of just artists in general that are huge that I think are overrated as a whole. So just picking their most popular albums. So for me, OK Computer by Radiohead, which I know is like a nuclear option here, right? I'm just going to get decimated for this one. But that's my honest opinion. I think that Radiohead is incredibly overrated, probably the most overrated band of all time. And this album is the most overrated album of their discography and in rock. So yeah, no question about that. OK Computer, I think it sucks. Cracked Rear View by Hootie and the Blowfish. See, it sucks so much, I don't even care about it, can't even pronounce it right. Yeah, Hootie and the Blowfish blows, as their name would imply, and this album, the fact that it's like one of the top selling albums, right, because even if it wasn't for that, then it wouldn't matter, because I think most people think it's just kind of mediocre, but the fact that it does have like 20 million records sold or something is just fucking crazy. I'm going to throw in another Green Day album here. I think Kerplunk is very overrated. I think it's the worst album they have, honestly, which is another hot take, because some diehards out there think that Green Day sucked after Kerplunk, right? They sold out, whatever. Yeah, I think that's all bullshit. I think Kerplunk is awful because, they're pop punk for a reason, right? You need that pop, you need that production in there. There are some bands that sound awesome on that super just raw, tinny, pure punk sound, but Green Day was not one of them. They needed some polish, and the results kind of speak for themselves when, you consider that with Dookie, their first album, that was more, pop inspired, just absolutely took them in the stratosphere. Another one that's kind of like in that same vein is Dude Ranch by Blink-182. Again, Blink is another one of those bands that doesn't really sound good on that raw production, I think. And I'm not really a big fan of Scott Raynor either on the drums. I think Travis Barker's way better. So again, anything after that they did following Dude Ranch, I think is way better. But that one is just, very big in the fandom. And then the last one would be With the Beatles by the Beatles. Because, I don't think there's really that many bad Beatles albums, but this is one that's just more like disappointing, considering it's the Beatles after all, and the fact that like half of it is just covers is like just kind of dumb, because the Beatles were some of the best songwriters of all time. So you don't want to hear them do other people's songs. You want them to be very expressive with their lyrics and such. Given it was an early album by them, it was their second album, but I think Please Please Me is one of their best. It's probably my top 3 favorites for them. So yeah, there's really no excuse why their second one following that was such a disaster. Who is the best character from How I Met Your Mother season 1? So just isolating the opinion just based on the first season. For me, it would be Marshall. As much as I love Barney, I think that Barney really only gets the best character label because of stuff that happens later in the series. I think that Marshall, right from the get-go, is the most well-rounded, the most, sort of charismatic, and the most optimistic character. And I think that just is really great to have with some of the more cynicism that comes with season 1, How I Met Your Mother at times. I'd say him and Robin are probably the top 2, honestly. But Barney overall was the best later on because of some of the story arcs that they gave his character that really made him more human. Because just based on season one, honestly, you could argue Barney was maybe the worst. I mean, especially morally, right? He was a very entertaining character, but morally he was definitely the worst. So, and he definitely didn't have like the more dramatic side figured out yet. That was all Marshall and Lily, right? Was the more dramatic, emotional tinge to it. So overall, most well-rounded. I gotta say Marshall. What are my thoughts on TV Reddit? I think that Reddit overall is pretty cool. I mean, it's definitely one of my go-tos for social media, and the TV subreddit, r/television, is my most, visited subreddit. It's pretty much something I look at daily, because it has just a lot of great, community discussion, and you get all of the latest news that's going on with TV. Most of it is just like people posting articles and, news outlets, just covering stories about stuff that's renewed, or, stuff that's getting canceled, or, new shows that are coming out. So it's a good way to keep up with that. But my biggest problem with Reddit is that it just feels like a lot of people have the same opinions on stuff, and you just end up seeing the same comments over and over again. Like, if people just ask, like, in general, like, what are your favorite shows of all time, you're gonna get just a ton of, like, Breaking Bads and, like, The Wires and Sopranos and stuff. Like, it just feels like there's just too much of the same opinion out there, and there's not enough variety as far as, like, people that really go out of their way to find unique stuff or talk about unique stuff. So that's really my biggest issue with it. But outside of that, I mean, I think it's a pretty cool place, and it is something I look at pretty much every day. So, I can't complain too much because I am a part of it. What is my favorite band of all time? Pretty simple if you've seen some of my other videos. Clearly, the person who asked this is a very new viewer, so I can't blame them. But yeah, Green Day is my favorite band. When was the last time I cried during a TV show or listening through an album? That's a great question. I don't think I've ever cried while listening through an album. It's just not something I do. I don't really cry in general, to be honest with you, because I'm a guy. So that's just kind of one of those things. But there have been a few times where I've come very close to crying while watching TV. And I'll give you a few examples here. One of the most recent for sure was Breaking Bad, because I recently finished it. And I would say Crawl Space is probably the most emotional episode of the show. There's, definitely an argument for Ozymandias. That's a great episode, but my personal favorite is Crawl Space, and the last 5 minutes of it, and Walter's, the story arc they go through with just him, just kind of this whole scheme that he's built up, and then it all kind of falling under him. And just all the emotion that he gives out in that scene is just wonderful. Bryan Cranston's acting is top notch there. That is fantastic stuff. Where he's just maniacally laughing on the floor. Ooh, that's a great fucking scene. The other one I have on here is Chicago PD, The Other Side. Oh man, that's a great episode. Season 8 in general of Chicago PD is just one of the most underrated and one of the most underappreciated seasons out there. I think Chicago PD in general is very underrated, but this episode, man, this had some of the most emotional moments with Kim in it, and Kim is my favorite character on the show. And dude, the scenarios they put her in this episode are just heartbreaking, and they are just so fucking sad. I mean, everything up until this point that she had going on with Michaela and Adam, and then just seeing how it all kind of comes together is the season finale too. So this big emotional end for the season here, and yeah, the execution there was fantastic. The scene in particular with it's Adam, Jay, and Kevin when they're at the precinct in the cage, and they are just fuming at one another, and Adam and Jay are just butting heads and going at it. That is some of the best acting I have ever seen, just period. That is so fucking good. Patrick Fluger, man, he should have got some Emmy love or some award love, because his performance there is just outstanding, man. Just so good. So that's definitely one. And then the last one I have here is The Walking Dead, which is probably the most amount of times where I've come the closest. But for me, season 2, just in general, I think season 2 is the best of The Walking Dead there. And there were just so many episodes and so many moments in that season where it comes very close to just absolutely bawling out for these characters. The barn scene is probably the best scene of the entire show, which I won't spoil if you haven't seen it, but dude, I literally watch that scene probably once a week. I fucking love it, man. Shane is so fucking good in that scene. John Bernthal, man, just what a beast. and then the reveal at the end, like, oh my god, Carol too. It's just so good, man. I wish I could like talk about it, but yeah, it'd be too much to spoil, so I won't go into it. But yeah, that's really good. The first time I saw it, man, like did not see it coming too, like the twists and stuff they have. Oh man, I love The Walking Dead so much. So yeah, those are a few times where I've come closest to crying during a show. What are my top 3 best and worst shows currently for 2022? I won't go too in depth on this because I am planning to make a video at the end of the year where I go over everything I've seen and I'll give more details then. So I'll just run through these quick. My top 3 easily, The Bear right now. That's a 10 out of 10. That is one of the best shows I have ever seen. Absolutely love it. Next Level Chef, Gordon Ramsay competition is awesome. And then The Resort is what I'm watching currently, and it's fantastic. Tracy from How I Met Your Mother, Kristen Milioti is awesome on it. And then, what's his name? William Jackson Harper from The Good Place as well. Chidi from The Good Place is the second lead. Yeah, they have a ton of chemistry together. It's super funny. Very interesting like story arc. It's kind of this like action adventure show. Really, really good stuff. For the worst shows of the season, easily the worst show is Domino Masters. There is no fucking clear-cut answer than that. That is just an awful show. 1 out of 10. Eric Stone Street as the host just makes no sense. Get that out of here. The Final Straw, as well as another really, really bad show, another like stupid gimmicky game show. Janelle James hosting that from Abbott Elementary, and for no fucking reason she should be there. I feel so bad because Abbott's great and her talents are great, but totally wasted there. Awful show. And then Promised Land is the worst drama right now, 1 out of 10 as well. Totally disappointing. Where did I get my TV posters that you see behind me? Mostly through Amazon. When I was kind of sorting my studio space here, I was kind of thinking like, you know, what stuff do I want to present and how do I want my backdrop to look? And I was just kind of going over some, you know, my favorite shows and just figured posters was the easiest way to go about that and kind of make it look a lot more presentable. And just, yeah, kind of ordering a few of them. This one I know for sure, this Law & Order poster that I got was actually a gift from Mike. So not all of them are Amazon, but I know this one was a gift. How much money? I can't remember if this was a gift or not, actually, because I got this one a long time ago. So that one might have been a gift. I know the SVU one was. And then these 3 I know were all Amazon ones. So those I got on just online. What are the most 5 overrated and underrated musical artists of all time? Overrated are Radiohead, Bob Dylan, The Grateful Dead, Janis Joplin, and the Dave Matthews Band. Without question, all of them suck. There is almost no redeeming qualities for any of them. Most underrated, Lil Nas X, World Party, anybody in the YouTube rap space, so probably just as like one example I'll give is Quadeca. So Quadeca, Dev Lemons, and Ali and AJ are the most underrated. Yeah, I think Lil Nas X, like he's definitely the most famous of them, but he's just underappreciated because most people still see him as like a one-hit wonder, or they just see him for like the controversy, which is not really a fair representation of all that he has, because he can put out some really good music, and Montero is a great album. So I just think, you know, more people should give him a chance and kind of look deeper beyond just what the mainstream is kind of said about him. What are the main things I look for when watching a brand new show? There's mostly like 3, I guess, main like criteria that I kind of look at, which are the actors on it, and you know, if there's a show that is coming out that has a lot of big actors that I recognize from other shows that I've enjoyed, then that's definitely something that I'll put, you know, as a kind of higher priority. Is it relevant show? Is it a new show that, you know, people are talking about? And, you know, is it currently airing is another big one. And then sometimes I'll look at the ratings, and by that I mean like the like, you know, TV, like, you know, the viewership, you could say. Because for me, I really don't care about the IMDb score or like Rotten Tomatoes or anything like that, because I'll usually look at that afterwards and then kind of see what other people are saying. But if I'm just going into it for myself, I usually want to be more like surprised by what I'm going to see, so I don't want to have like any bias going into it. And usually the viewership is a good way to test like what shows are the most popular and what shows are the most relevant that I'll find, good discussion for. So that's another criteria I look for. But it's definitely not isolated to just those three, but those are like the main ones that I usually use as a way to gauge what I should check out. How do I feel about the band Gorillaz? I think they're all right. I don't really know a ton by them outside of like some of their earlier work, like Demon Days, is the one album that I'm most familiar with. They might be a little overrated in some circles, but from what I know and from what I've heard, I think they're just kind of okay. What, in my opinion, was the best decade for music? Easily the 80s, no doubt about that. The 80s was fantastic because it had the best variety of stuff, the best, there was a ton of different genres that were really emerging that have stayed relevant all this time later, like hip hop, kind of was first birthed in the 80s there. I would say like the rock scene was probably one of the best that it ever was in the 80s, just so much variety. Alt rock was also another one that kind of started that really gained a lot of traction later on. Pop was at its best in the 80s, so yeah, the 80s, man, that's easily the best in my opinion. Is there a band that grew on you over time and or a band that you liked a long time ago that got worse over time for you? Yeah, there's a handful that I could, kind of answer for either of these categories. Most of the time, I will say, like, especially when it comes to music, whatever my first impression of something is usually stays the course, even like years down the road. Just because, like, I don't know, I'm a pretty decisive person. I'm a pretty, like, as soon as I see something, I'll pretty much have an opinion on it, whether it's good or bad, and whether it's something I'll stick with or not. And it usually doesn't change that much over time to where it's like super dramatic, but there are a few exceptions to that. Definitely the most dramatic drop off as far as something that I just like don't really listen to at all anymore is Bon Jovi. I mean, at one point they were like close to my top 5 favorite bands, maybe even top 5, honestly, but nowadays, like, they wouldn't even crack my top 100. I like barely listen to them. I still have respect for them, but I just don't really care about their stuff much anymore. And then for a band that kind of grew on me over time, I'd probably say like REO Speedwagon is one of the best examples. I always kind of put them in the same category as like Boston, Foreigner, Styx, like an ELO even, kind of like 70s, 80s, like classic rock, like kind of like a corporate rock, kind of label to them. And I always thought that they were like one of the weakest in that category, so I was kind of just wrote them off. But now, just in the past like couple of years, I've really been reabsorbing and re-listening to a lot of their deeper cuts and like some of their more elaborate albums outside of just the singles. And they've definitely grown on me in that sense. Because like you hear a song like, what's an example? Like, I don't know, I'm trying to think, like, there's some songs that they played on just classic rock like, all the time by them that just get really, they just get sick of over time. But then when you check out the deeper cuts, it's like, oh, they're actually pretty solid stuff. It's not just this corporate rock. So they're probably the best example of someone that grew on me over time. What are some of my favorite shows that only lasted a single season and some of my favorites that lasted 10 or more seasons? I'll do my top 3 real quick for each of these. My favorite that went on for 10 or more would probably be Modern Family, Law & Order SVU, and SNL are my top 3. And then for ones that only lasted a single season, I'm going with Majority Rules, Siberia, and WandaVision. What TV shows am I watching currently? There's a handful that I have been watching in the last couple of weeks that I'll tell you about. The ones that are on right now that are currently airing their seasons are MasterChef Season 12. I've been watching. I actually just caught up with it this morning, which is cool. So that's the Back to Win. It's like all the previous contestants are, coming back and getting their redemption shot of it. Currently, I don't know if anyone's like keeping up with it, but I was really rooting for Gabriel because I really liked his season that he's came in on, and he was one of my favorites, but he just got eliminated like a few weeks ago. So currently, probably Derek and Dara are the two that I'm most like rooting for. Definitely the one that I am not a fan of at all is Emily right now. She is fucking annoying as hell. I fucking, white bitch can't do anything, like any remotely foreign or like other cultures outside of just like white fucking people food. Like she fucking sucks. I fucking hate Emily. But no, that's been very entertaining. I haven't seen like a proper season of MasterChef in a long time, so it's cool to come back and rewatch this. And then I'm watching Beavis and Butthead right now on Paramount, which is really good. Me and Mike are watching that. The Resort, I said earlier, on Peacock with Kristen Milioti is really good. Tales from the Walking Dead I just started, which that just started a couple weeks ago. That is okay. I have only seen the first 2 episodes. I haven't seen the one with Alpha yet. I know that that's like the fan favorite one that people want to see, but I haven't gotten to see that one yet. So the 2 that I saw were the Terry Crews and Olivia Munn one. That was the pilot. And then the one with Jillian Bell, which that one I did not like. I did not like the Jillian Bell one. That was like probably one of the worst Walking Dead episodes or like anything remotely related to the franchise. That thing was terrible because it was like Groundhog's Day. Yeah, that thing sucked. The Terry Crews one I thought was okay, but yeah, there's just something about this one. Like, there's not enough action in it, and I feel like the best part of The Walking Dead is like the characters. Like, that's the best aspect to the original show. All the iconic characters that had like a lot of development over time, and that's why it's been able to sustain itself for as long as it has without really getting stale, because the quantity of characters they've had to work off of, and then the fact that they all get proper screen time to really develop and become a lot more relatable and a lot more human. And with like an anthology series like that, you just can't do that, because you're only going to be in 1 episode. So that's a problem I think that it has right now, because there's just not enough time to build off these characters. Even if there only is like 2 in each episode, it's just not enough time, But maybe they will incorporate some of them into some of the spin-offs. I know a lot of people did like the Terry Crews performance, and I thought he was pretty good on it too, so I'd be willing to see more of him. But just as it stands as a show, I think that that's the biggest issue it has right now. And then one show that I've been watching that is an older one that I've just been watching, that it was like something that I was interested in that is not currently airing, is Don't Trust the Bee in Apartment 23, which is a show that I heard a lot about like back in the day, and it was kind of like a cult favorite. It was only on for 2 seasons, but it had really good reviews, and it was like, it's always been kind of labeled as one of those shows that was so good that got canceled too early, like a Streaks, or like a Freaks and Geeks or something. But it has Kristen Ritter from Breaking Bad, who played Jane, as the lead, and it has James Van Der Beek in it, and I'm a big fan of him, just in general. So, and he's pretty funny on the show, but I really like Kristen Ritter as the lead because she reminds me a lot of Max from Two Broke Girls, and that's kind of what I would best attribute the show to, is like kind of like a Two Broke Girls-esque style, and that is big for me because I'm a huge fan of Two Broke Girls. Very, very underrated show. So that was like right up my wheelhouse. So I've been really enjoying that. And I'm kind of surprised that like more people don't appreciate one or the other, because it's like people like this show and hate Two Broke Girls, but people know Two Broke Girls and don't know this show. And I feel like they're very similar. So they should have the same like legacy and reputation, but whatever. That's just like the more technical side. So. And then the next show that I'm going to be watching after all that is Gravity Falls, I told myself, because I finished Breaking Bad, and I've seen, obviously, How I Met Your Mother. So I've seen my favorite and Mike's favorite shows of all time, and I haven't seen Matt's favorite, which is Gravity Falls. So I'm going to be watching that soon. How do you balance what videos you want to make, what your audience wants to see, and what gets a lot of views? This is a very interesting question because there's a lot of like sort of layers to this, and there's a lot of factors that go into it. This is probably a question that I could do a whole video on, honestly. And I could just sit here for like a couple hours talking about YouTube and stuff. But I'd say the biggest thing is probably, at the end of the day, it has to be something that I want to do, because if I'm not enjoying it, then the video isn't going to come out good, right? Then it's like obvious that it just suffers in quality, because there have been times where like I have tried to make stuff that I've been, that like people have requested or like off of a recommendation someone has, and I thought like the idea was okay, but I wasn't like super into it, and then when I go to make the video, it just doesn't turn out well because I just don't have the same passion or the same drive to make it. So it has to be something that I like to make. That's like the number one rule, because the views, like, it really doesn't matter. That's like the least important. The stuff that the audience wants to see can be, but it depends on as well, like, what specifically, it depends how vocal they are, I guess you could say, because I could have someone just comment like randomly on a video, and they could say, like, you know, you should make this top 10 or you should make this compilation video or whatever. But if I have more like of an innate sense that this video in this series does well because it gets a lot of views and because a lot of people comment and interact with it, that's more of a telltale sign than like someone just, you know, making a comment one-off saying that they should want a video. Does that make sense? I don't know. It's kind of hard to describe, I guess, unless you've like actually been part of it and like have seen it from both sides. But essentially, like, if a video does very well and it gets a lot of views, that's more like, I guess, important, or that's like more of a kind of sign that people want more of that than if just like someone randomly comments, you know, you should make this top 10 or something. So that's kind of what I see to it. But the views are not important, because there's been videos that I've made that I really like and that are some of my favorites that have like 20 views versus ones that have like, you know, 500,000, right? So it just depends. How do I pick the most popular songs for the rock band's first song versus song that blew up versus most popular song series? I'm very glad someone asked this, because this is the question I get pretty much every single day. Or it feels like I get this every day. On pretty much every single video, I'll ask this. Someone will ask this, which the truth of it is, it comes from you guys. So if someone has a disagreement about what the most popular song is, it was not me picking it. It was my audience picking it, because pretty much all those videos, especially now, the ones that were made like from episode 5 onward, are fan-suggested bands and fan-suggested songs. So I will just literally take exactly what the comment says, right? If someone says you should do this band, here are the 3 songs you should use, then I will take those, especially for bands that I'm not that familiar with, where I trust my audience has definitely more of knowledge on what the actual songs for those categories are. Now, the earlier ones where I was picking it, that usually boiled down to either Billboard success or Spotify streams, or sometimes both. But there were some exceptions, because it also depends on, you know, the quantity, or the quality, I guess you could say. Like, if, say, for example, you know, a song that's their most popular on Spotify has 200 million streams or something, and it came in at like number 5 on Billboard. It was like peak number 5 or something. But there's a different song that has, let's say, 500,000 streams on YouTube, then I might go with the song that has more streams on YouTube, even though Spotify is more direct when it comes to music. YouTube still has, you know, more streams behind it, right? If it's 500 versus 200. So it just kind of depends like that. And obviously it's not going to be a perfect science by any means. There's some that I've like redacted, that I've changed over time. Like Green Day, for example, is one, because Green Day was the very first band that was featured. And like the original most popular song I picked was Basket Case, because it's like kind of the song that, you know, took them up to the next level and was kind of their most recognizable on like the radio and stuff. But I've heard people in the comments argue for pretty much any of their big hits. I've definitely seen ones for American Idiot, Boulevard, Time of Your Life. I've seen a few for like Jesus of Suburbia, because that's kind of the biggest fan favorite. There's some for like Wake Me Up When September Ends. There's like a ton that you could pick for them, you know, there's a ton. So that's kind of what the whole series is representative of in the first place, is like just kind of drawing the community discussion and kind of figuring out, you know, collectively these different discussions that you can have in these different debates, because that's what it's all about, you know, just building a community and talking about music. So as long as it's all positive, right? Because some people have been really, really defensive or like really nasty about it and be like, how dare you put this one song on for the most popular? And it's like, who gives a shit? You know, this is like benign, like fucking it's a YouTube video, you know, like come on, man, get your priorities straight. So, but yeah, just to answer your question, most of the time Billboard or Spotify, but sometimes YouTube if it is, you know, a higher number. What was the very first CD I bought for myself? I have no idea, to be honest with you. I have absolutely no idea what the answer to this could be. If I had to guess, it was probably just like a compilation of some sort by a band that I liked, like maybe like One by the Beatles, you know, may have been one. Because I don't know, I've been listening to music since I was born, you know, and most of the stuff that I have gotten over the years, or like, you know, have kind of acquired over the years, with stuff that my dad had and stuff that, you know, or my relatives had, that was just passed down to me and my brother. And then when we go out and we buy our own stuff, you know, it's kind of, that's more of a recent thing we've been doing just in the past, like, maybe, you know, I don't know, 5 or 6 years, right? Because as kids, like, we weren't really as big into music. We were more like TV people growing up. So at least I was. But now, honestly, everything is online. So, you know, you just do streaming and stuff. So I don't really buy CDs much anymore. Obviously, you know, I think most people are like that. But I do kind of like have some mixed feelings about that, because I do like collecting CDs, but it's just really expensive, you know, and it's kind of silly because if you listen to a ton of music like me, it's just not very logistical to have to buy a bunch of stuff to listen to, you know, a smaller portion of artists if you were doing it that way than if you just paid for a subscription to Spotify or YouTube or something. So it's just more of a you know, logistical sort of reasoning there. But honestly, I mean, most stuff you can find for free, to be honest with you, like on YouTube anyway, so it's kind of silly to pay for anything. I think I'm definitely one of those people that, like, back in the day was on like LimeWire, or maybe not LimeWire, but like a, you know, offshoot of that in some way, where I was downloading stuff, you know, MP3s that had jumbled names with a billion artists that would kind of like clickbait you into it. Yeah, the good times, right? So I don't know. I'm part of that generation. I don't really believe in the philosophy of buying for music or buying art, but you know, obviously I have in the past. So what can you do there? What are some of my favorite music genres here? This is a really good question. Top 5, like in no particular order: rock, hip hop, pop, R&B, and then like EDM or like dance type music. Rock will probably forever and always be number 1, because, you know, most rock subgenres obviously all boil it down back to rock, and the most listened to genre for me is like alt rock or pop punk. But honestly, I mean, hip hop and rap is a close second. I do listen to a lot of it. I just don't have the same, like, I guess you wouldn't know it because I don't really make that many videos on it. Partially because my audience is more rock based, so, you know, I try to cater to them, but I do have a lot of hip hop and such that I do listen to just like outside of YouTube. So that's probably my second most. And with that, it looks like that was the last question here for the Q&A. So once again, I want to thank everyone for joining me today, watching this Q&A presentation here on YouTube. Like I said, if you didn't get a chance to ask your question, you can feel free to leave it in the comments there. I know there were a couple questions that I wasn't able to get to here because obviously I just got a ton. So if I missed it, you know, I apologize. But I did have a couple here that I will say, kind of as foreshadowing for the future, that I was very inspired by to make separate videos for. So if you didn't see your question, there's a chance that there might be a video coming in the future that might feature it, that hopefully will answer it for you, because it was just too big to fit into this video. So I don't want to give too much away, but just for a couple of them out there. But anyways, thank you guys once again for checking out this video here. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.